This is Beyond the Resume, the podcast that brings you the stories, advice, and insights behind some of the most successful people in real estate. Beyond the Resume is brought to you by Jackson Lucas Executive Search, the industry leader in human capital solutions. Here is Chris Papa.
Matthew Janeczko, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here.
We met in person briefly, very briefly at AHF. I love what you're doing. You're the Chief Executive Officer of Sisters of Charity Housing Development Corporation out of the forgotten borough, but the best borough, Staten Island.
Indeed.
Can you tell us about your organization, please?
Sure. So we were officially founded in 1998. It really came out of the Sisters of Charity ran a hospital in Staten Island that is now defunct. And someone who worked in the administration there figured out the HUD 202 program and said, hey, there's all these seniors that are coming in for medical care. They go home to two-family homes, one-family homes with stairs. They love stairs. They keep coming back to the hospital. We need to build housing that lets them flourish, right? And so he started doing these twos one after another. And then the sisters, as I say all the time, sisters are going to sister, and different sisters would find like needs in a community. So they started a homeless shelter in Harlem. And then they rehabbed a little 18-unit building down the street where the women could move out of the shelter into this apartment building. And then they were in Rockland County in New York. And so they did a LIHTC deal. And so all of this was sort of grafted underneath Sisters of Charity Housing. So when I joined in 2019, we had like 750 units.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty big. And then, sisters make things happen, usually. The ones I know at least.
They do.
They don't have a lot of the ones social tact, but they get stuff done.
And it was amazing, right? Is we would look through these deals on what they did, especially in Harlem, and like they followed no rules. Like they literally went, like the shelter was like this burnt out building that legend has it. Like one of the sisters knew someone who knew Ed Koch. And so somehow she like harangued Ed Koch into literally giving her a building from an in-rent tax sale and just started a shelter.
Yeah.
Because there were people who were homeless. They were in the neighborhood. So what are we going to do? We're going to build a shelter because this same sister had women sleeping like in the dining room of the convent. And the sister said, we really need a more permanent solution. So she bothered the mayor into giving her a building. Sisters are going to sister.
You just got to get in there, man. Find your cracks. But so what's the organization look like now?
So we have about 1,500 units of housing. We've doubled our capacity in the past 6 years. And we have built out a system, in a sense, a system of affiliates. So Sisters of Charity Housing is the parent corporation. And we've built a management company. We've built a solar development company, a services company, and a development company. So all of which sit under this umbrella to really do things from the beginning to end. Necessity is the mother of all invention. Right? We weren't happy with property management, so we started doing that. We wanted more control of the development process, so we started a development affiliate and started just organically grew.
And you're how many boroughs?
So we are right now, we're in Staten Island and Manhattan and the Bronx. And then we have properties we have properties in Rockland County and Ulster. And we're actually in talks to do something in Albany right now, a joint venture.
Cool. And then, a lot of people listening to this podcast are trying to get into affordable housing. They think they need a specific type of background. Now, you have a pretty unique background. How did you end up being an affordable housing developer and CEO?
So accidentally, so you could Google me. I'm a former Catholic priest. I was a Capuchin Franciscan for 12 years. Grew up in New Jersey, went to school in D.C., Bergen County, right by Giant Stadium. So everything about the Sopranos is true. I grew up with those folks. So I joined the Friars, saw the world, ended up in Boston for school, was assigned to Yonkers for my first assignment, was there for 3 years, was made pastor of the parish, decided that I wanted to start a family, wanted to have a family, decided to leave. And since I was there, pastor of the parish, also running the high school, I thought that I was going to stay in education. And so I started sending in my resume, going on interviews. I went to Oakland for an interview, to be president of a high school. And it's kind of getting near the end where I'm going to leave. And I tell one of the sisters of charity, who was a parishioner, my sister Regina, I said to her, I'm leaving. And she goes, well, I think I have a job for you. I said, oh, what's that? She says, well, Sister Donna, who's the executive director of Sisters of Charity Housing, was just elected president of the congregation. So she needs a replacement. You should go and ask for her job. So I printed out my resume. I found an old blazer and threw it on and made an appointment to see her. I show up in her office and she says, so do you want to develop property with me? And I said, actually, I'm here for your job. And she smiled and told me to sit down. And the next thing I know, I was an executive director of a affordable housing operation with no experience other than basically being a landlord, right? As a pastor, you have all these bills, contractors, things are always breaking. The church was 100 years old. And here I was, and they handed me the keys and said, figure it out.
How did you figure it out? Like, what did you have? I mean, what did you kind of first learn? Like, how did it help?
So ground had just broken on one of our LIHTC deals that we were joint venturing with Rockabill Consultant. And so it was like, okay, Matt, this you got to figure out how to do this thing. And then so I'm kind of figuring out the job. And then the pandemic hits. And actually, the pandemic on a learning level was really helpful for me because I spent hours on webinars that Enterprise was doing and LISC was doing, and any webinar I could find. I just would log on and sit there and listen. And then every day at 4:00, I would go for a run and I'd log into podcasts again. I'd log into webinars again. And I can remember learning a ton actually about how the city worked, the city and housing, because they had a 4:30 weekly call with Stephen Banks, who was in charge of DSS at the time. And they would do a readout of everything that was going on and take questions. And so I would run and listen to Stephen Banks talk about cash assistance and what's opening and what's closing and what's the latest guidance. And I just was a sponge and tried to soak up as much as I could.
That's amazing. So you came in and then, I mean, you've doubled the portfolio.
We have.
Why is that? Why is such rapid growth?
So I think, so we have an interesting, luck, I guess I'm now this is going to be my second cliche that is probably not allowed on podcasts, but luck is the residue of design. So I have a really unique background. And so I can speak in a very coherent way, not only to sort of the theological existence of the world, but have lived experience of talking about faith and mission and looking to what happens when mission needs to change. And so I hit it off with all the sisters, and inevitably other sisters, other communities would call our sisters, my sisters, and say, hey, we have a problem, right? Like sister so-and-so wants to retire. She's been executive director of this 200 unit property for 50 years. What are we going to do? Like there is no plan. And little by little, those calls would come in and we would, in a sense, come in and take over as consultants, management, and eventually owner. So, and because of that, and we were able to increase our capacity, that gave us leverage to then go out and look for other deals.
We just did a faith-based development webinar. Are you seeing a lot of that? I mean, is there a lot of land that you traditionally were used for other things that you're now trying to convert into housing?
So it's tough, right? Because in the Catholic world, everything was built from 1955 to 1965, and the rooms are just too small to do just about anything, and the hallways are just narrow enough to not do anything, and the pipes are just filled with enough lead, and the boiler room has just enough asbestos to make it be a problem. But what I'm finding is that it's existing projects that need new life or new vision that there's a lot of. It's very hard in New York State to develop existing property owned by a religious community because of all the laws and the Attorney General approval process and all of that, which is necessary, important, comes from the right place, but it just creates a lot of time and effort. But, so for example, down in Harlem, the Religious of the Sacred Heart of Mary had 3 SRO buildings that were getting hammered during the pandemic, right? Rental arrears, people moving out, nobody moving in, 30% vacancy. They came to us and said, what could you do? And so we came in there. The first thing was that we painted all 3 buildings, top to bottom, cleaned them up. And in March, now 4 years later, we're going to close on an $80 million preservation with the state to tenant in place rehab 2 of those buildings. And the third, we're going to move residents from the third into the other 2 SROs and do a sub rehab and put in studios and bring in New York 1515. And it just, so what happened was there was this existing thing, but the city, the state, the housing world has changed so much. It needed a new vision or a new perspective. And I think that that's really what that's the value, and that's a necessary thing when it comes to faith, working with faith-based groups, right? There's something new that's happening, right? And I think to be able to speak that language in faith is really important, but then also to have the knowledge to how to make it happen, right? I think that you need both.
And what's the typical property you develop or own?
So we have our largest property is 200 units. Our smallest is 18. In terms of development, acquisition, I think anywhere from 50 to 150 has really become our sweet spot. But certainly there are times we go below that and times we go above that because it needs to make, when it makes sense. So for instance, there was a 5-family house in Kingston that was for sale, that was dilapidated, that had tenants living there. And somebody from our team passed by and said, we should take a look at this. And so we bought it and we're going to rehab it. And why? Because we want to move north. We wanted to be in Kingston. They're very pro-housing, right? So it made sense. At the same time, there are properties that are bigger that we've looked to acquire, senior project-based vouchers, all that. It all adds together, right? I think that what I'm trying to say is there's no cookie cutter, right? It's not just one type, right? In terms of one type of population, one type of financing. It's where we're needed, as I like to say, right? So Sister Charity, one of their things that they've imbued in me is the sisters go where they're needed. And that's what I've tried to do with our organization, go where there's need.
And you have services too you provide?
We do. So we've been really intentional about always aggressively pursuing service contracts, right? Subsidy money from the state, from the city. But we made the decision that we need some type of case management at every property that we own, whether it's funded or not. And so if we need to use our balance sheet to pay for a social worker, we're going to do that, right? We made that commitment about 2.5 years ago. And I think it's really important because the amount of problems that we help people solve and allow them to live and enjoy where they're living is really important. And frankly, happy tenants pay their rent on time and they don't break things intentionally, right? That's just the way it is. Being a friar, I live in community. I was living in a house of 20 guys, right? If you live in a house of 20 people and there's something on the floor and nobody takes responsibility, something else is on the floor. But if there were 3 folks and you all like each other, well, you're going to pick that up, right? Somebody's going to pick it up even if it's not theirs. And that's what we try and do in the housing we build and we operate and we manage, is to create a sense of pride in the community so that people do take ownership and they feel like, hey, I like living here, so I'm going to take care of the problems. And when my toilet overflows, I'm going to call the super, not try and fix it myself.
So growing up in Jersey, you had a calling, obviously, for something greater than yourself. And you answered it, which is pretty cool. I'm a big Franciscan guy myself. I do a retreat every year, a place in Danville, California called San Dimiano. And now you've kind of transitioned that bigger calling to something else, right? And does it fulfill that? Obviously, you had an itch that needed to be scratched or something, right? Does it fulfill that?
Yeah. So it does, because I like maybe this gets back to your original first question is how did I get into this and how do people get into the industry? you got to like to figure things out. Like I like figuring out problems and puzzles. Like I like to figure out, well, if we move this here, if we do that, what can we do to solve the problem? And so for me, the itch that this scratches is we get to build something, right? You see something at the end of the day, tangible. We also have the opportunity to like solve problems. Like I gotta say, when I was living as a friar and working with the poor, a lot of problems of people started with they didn't have a place to live where they felt safe, or they felt cared for, or they felt respected, or nobody wakes up and says, I want to be an addict, and nobody wakes up and says, I want to be homeless. And it happens all the time. And so for me, right, one of the things that I look at is like, hey, most people who end up homeless, something happened to make them homeless. Something situational, something outside of their control, right? There's agency. Maybe it's partly their fault at some point, but very few people say, I want to be out on the street, right? I want to be couch surfing.
I do work with the Catholic worker here, and there's 2 sisters that are involved. Those one that run everything and kick butt. Well, yeah, that's always the day one when I started working there. They'd be like, these people need the thing they need most more than anything is permanent housing. Like once you kind of get that, like everything else can kind of fall into place. But until then, it's like you're just kind of putting your finger in the jam.
It's just triage, right? It's just trying to get them to the next day.
Right. So what's the vision now? Where are you guys going besides Kingston?
So we want to be we want to be in all 5 boroughs and reach Albany. That's our growth plan. Our goal is 2,000 units by 2030. I'm comfortable that we're gonna get there. And we want to everything that we own outright. We also want to manage and be able to provide services there. Right. So we want to have everything. That's really the goal. And then from like an internal point of view, we've created a place where by and large, people enjoy working with us, for us. And I want to keep growing that culture. I think that it's really important that city and state and federal agencies like working with you, that attorneys, that engineers, that architects like working with the developer. Like, I think that that's really important. And I try and think about hiring staff who want to find like a home, like who want to be part of a mission, something bigger than themselves. So I think that like, if you talk about vision for the organization, aside from brick and mortar success, is to create an opportunity for people to enjoy what they do as much as I do.
How many people work there?
So we have so many entities. I'm trying to put together a census of how many people actually work for us, because they work for, you work for a building, you work for this, but I would say we probably all told, we probably have between 125 and 150 people working now between management, development, and services. So it's become when I started, it was basically me and my now chief of staff. It was the 2 of us, like kind of trying to figure it out.
Right. Well, I'm glad that I'm glad you got that gig. Yeah. Like you said before, that's usually like we work with Catholic Homes as one of our clients, in the Archdiocese too. And so, yeah, a lot of it was like, oh, we had this like one guy who was like you said, that managing his whole property for 50 years and they're retiring or something. And like now you get like a professionally trained one, you know what I mean? Younger one. It's like, there's like a changing of the kind of the guard there it seems like within the Catholic housing community in New York. So I'm glad that you're leading the charge with these guys. So I know you've probably been in some, pretty difficult and trying situations throughout your as a friar, but now you're about to have another one because you just sat on the hot seat, Matthew.
I'm ready.
You want to put your shrock on or frock? No,
I am good. I'm ready to go. I'm wearing the uniform of every developer, a 3/4 zip and a button-down shirt. I'm ready.
You got jeans on?
I do not. I'm actually, it's 15 degrees here, so I'm wearing corduroys. I really
all right. Well,
stepped out of my comfort zone.
Developer, today. Yeah, you got it. You looked the part. Do you have a favorite book or podcast you'd like to recommend?
So I cannot plug into the doom scrolling podcast world, which is like what so much is right now. And so I spend, when I'm in the car or I'm running, I listen to audiobooks. And my absolute favorite right now, I'm through 10 of them, is Louise Penny's series of Armand Gamache, who's a homicide detective for the Sûreté de Quebec. They're
Cool.
fiction. They are great character studies. I have learned so much about humanity listening to them. Like, it's fiction, but I love thinking about the characters and the development. So like, to me, that's like my go-to. And the problem is there are always cliffhangers at the end. So then I end up listening to 2 in a row. And people go what do you nuts? Who does this? I said, well, I do.
I gotta
So
get
I think that's where I'm at, is listening to fiction to escape from the world.
quickest way from a man's head to his heart is through a story. So
Indeed
there
it
you
is.
go. You're a busy guy, it sounds like, running this organization. What do you do throughout the day or in the morning? I like to find out what people do to kind of ground themselves for the day.
So I think the biggest change, aside from getting married, is having a child. So Caitlin, my son, is 20 months old, and we got into this routine where Caitlin's in education, so she's got to get out the door in the morning. I have more flexibility, so I get Maddie ready for the day. And so what we've gotten to this routine is that he gets up in the morning, and I sit him on the couch. I get myself a cup of coffee. He has a bottle, and we cheers. I put my arm around him. He drinks his bottle. I drink my coffee, and I try and tell him about my day. And like, it sounds like kind of corny, but it's like the best 5 minutes of my day until he like starts spilling the milk on the couch or twisting around or knocks my coffee out of my hand, and so we talk a little bit. He curls up. When he loses interest in me, I look at what emails came in over the night. But that like 10 minutes in the morning, like I do that Monday through Friday, right? Every day of the week. And that's my grounding time.
I hope you
Like, that
continue
gets
to
me
do that.
that gets me gives me perspective on where the rest of the day is going to be.
I hope you continue to do that.
I hope he continues to want to do that, because I'm told there's a time he's not going to want anything to do with me.
My son's 15. They're pretty close, but yeah, there's times he doesn't want. But sometimes he'll like lay his head on my shoulder like he's a little kid again, which is nice. You mentioned about hiring people and making that place a place people want to work. What do you look for when you're hiring somebody? Like, what do you kind of, in the interview process, like, and how do you kind of vet that out? That's the hardest part, I feel.
Yeah.
Everyone
So
wants something, but they don't know how to find it.
yeah. So I think that Indeed is incredibly frustrating, because people just click apply all day and then they never show up. They don't. So I do as much through like word of mouth. Hey, I'm looking for somebody for this position. Do you know someone? Or when I meet someone, there's been times where I've met people who are awesome. I'm like, what position can I create to bring them on the team, to get them on the bus? And that has been like really an effective way of building a team. Like, what can I do to get you on my team? Because I think that's, I say this, like, I've been doing this now for 6 years. I'm 41 years old. I've had a career before. I have a career now. Like, I want to work with people who I like. Like, I want to work with people who are fun, who are kind, who are funny, who have senses of humor, who don't take themselves too seriously. So like, if you're that, you could figure out housing. Like, but that sort of thing. Like, it's not like going and getting a degree in like something housing-ish is great, but it's not like constituent. It's not like you need to go to medical school to be a doctor.
Right.
Right? You need to go to law school to be a lawyer.
Can't figure out that one on the fly.
Right. But if you like to figure out our industry, like, yeah, having a background in finance and accounting, knowing how to work Excel, like really, really helps. But if you're willing to work hard and learn, people can figure it out.
Yeah. I want to work with those same type of people, but I'm stuck with Julio, the producer. So what are you going to do, Can't always win. What mentors have had the most impact upon you?
So I got to say my dad, first of all.
Good one.
I still want to be like him when I grow up. And I think that there was a common decency that like my dad has, right? He's still with me, thank God. Like that I say like that, like he is just a human being who wants to be good and do the best he can and be good to other human beings, right? Like decency, fair play, independence. Like, so those are like the values. So I guess that's like mentor number one. I would say that mentor number two is actually somebody who was at the parish where I was serving, who has done housing development, who's been in finance, been in banking, chair of a bunch of organizations, charitable organizations. He's going to kill me for mentioning his name, but Jim Landy is a mentor of mine, and he's going to hate that I'm talking about him. He's going to be like, roll his eyes. But like, Jim has always looked at what can I do to make my community better and work backwards from there, right? Like, what's the need and what do I need to do all along the path to get us to fulfill this need? And no matter how it needs to be fulfilled, generally speaking, he finds a way to get there. So I'd say he's a second mentor. And then I think that as a third is a collective, the old friars who like joined at like 16 and were sent to the missions, like without knowing the language. Like they went to Papua New Guinea, they went to Guam, and they just figured it out, right? And that, like I say to people all the time, like, I will never regret being a friar, being a priest. The lessons I learned, 1/100th of the population gets to see what I've seen, hear what I've heard, and it's colored me, it's changed me as a human. Like, and so the old school friars, like, they were kick-ass. And like, and their just simplicity, their joy in suffering, like that, like things can be crappy sometimes, like bad things happen, but they kept their heads down and kept going. Like, to me, it made me, like, it truly made me who I am. So I'd say you use that as a collective.
I love that one. That's great. Well, it feels like you connecting with the Sisters of Charity Housing, becoming their CEO, is divinely inspired. I feel like they're lucky to have you. You're out there, you're front facing, which is great too. So thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Resume, a Jackson Lucas podcast where we take a deep dive into the career journeys of some of the top minds in real estate and equip you with the knowledge to move forward in your path towards the success you've envisioned. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Beyond the Resume. We're grateful for your support. All episodes of Beyond the Resume are brought to you by Jackson Lucas, building inclusive and diverse businesses through talent acquisition. Visit us at jacksonlucas.com